Greeting. I am Tom Earl. Welcome to the intermission, the last of the intermissions. I am grateful that you have joined me here, my friend. These are aimed at being a relaxing breeze, a cool glass of water on a warm day. So let us go ahead and do some breathing here together. Count of three, we're going to breathe in deeply. 3, 2, 1, breathe in. And release. Let's do that again. 3, 2, 1, breathe in. And release. Well, let me tell you a story. So I just finished the Shania Twain documentary. I recommend you watch it. I'll share with you a story from it. So after her second album was released with all the songs that you and I know. Oh, was it her third? I think it was her third album. The third one that went diamond in a row. See, I'm bad at relating the facts to you. So at the height of her success, she was horseback riding and she got bit by a tick and she got Lyme's disease. Now, I myself am a hick. So I live in constant fear of ticks biting me. And I know many of friends who have gotten Lyme's disease. One of my good friends was playing a concert in a cornfield. See, I warned you who I am. He's playing a concert in a cornfield and he was sick for a long time. Finally, they figured out his Lyme's disease. Another person I know was sick for a really long time. They couldn't figure out what it was. Finally, they figured out it's Lyme's disease. So if you haven't heard of Lyme's disease, it's very scary because ticks are so little that you oftentimes don't know you got bit by them. Myself, I live in fear of poison ivy, poison oak, and ticks. I am more afraid of those than bears and snakes, to be honest. So it took her out, and she shared how it actually changed her voice, and so she had stopped singing. So imagine that you finally, after sacrifice and suffering, and you finally reach the pinnacle of success, you're on top of the world, and then the thing you use towards that success is taken from you, and you never know if you'll get it back. Imagine being in that spiritual place. You're going to have to watch the documentary to learn how she handled it, but it has happened to me in areas of my life. I'm guessing it's happened to you. If it is not, it will. Because now, if you've been listening to these podcasts, you know my opinion. The point of life isn't to be manipulating our environment to give us the greatest chance to be comfortable and happy. I believe the point of life is to get you to know yourself. And oftentimes we go the deepest amidst suffering. I have heard folks say, I think it's in the Course of Miracles. I myself do not know the Course of Miracles very well, but lots of people I talk to love to quote it. And they say that you can either learn through joy or through suffering. I myself learn best through suffering. And so I continue to find myself in situations that have me going, why? Why? Shaking my fist at the sky, challenging God to a duel. And it sure gets me to know myself. I'll tell you that. Sure gets me to go on some long walks. Have friends who talk about conscious suffering, and I tell them to go kick rocks. What does vulnerability mean to you? I used to think it meant listening to Brene Brown and quoting her and And now I find that it is extremely, extremely uncomfortable, that there are things, there are moments where to other people it might look like I'm being vulnerable. But for me, it's my comfort zone, right? So sometimes for all of us, what for us is our comfort zone to other people looks like vulnerability. And so it can allow us to fool ourselves into thinking we're being vulnerable. And maybe at one point in our life, the vulnerability that we're being vulnerable with was, but then you adapt and you get used to that level of vulnerability. And when life invites you to go deeper, it resets vulnerability. And so I find that saying the thing out loud that makes you feel like you're going to throw up, or that there's a million ants eating you from the inside, or those sleepless nights where you feel like the pain is never going to end. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you will. That starting to say those things out loud, to start to be honest with yourself of the decisions you've made or are avoiding making, the ways we deal with conflicts, how in many ways things are out of our control, but a lot of things in our life are here because of our own choices. And saying those out loud and recreating the boundaries and moving out of people pleasing and releasing relationships and commitments and detangling yourself from situations that you find yourself in, that you realize are one-sided or are not able to grow with you. Oh, that's vulnerable to start to admit that stuff to yourself, and then to start to have those conversations. Feels like, if you were to say it out loud, it feels like betrayal sometimes. It feels like betrayal, those feelings you feel that feel like betrayal, those things that your body tells you that there's no hiding from, and acknowledging those things that feel life-shattering. Oh God, that's vulnerability. So it's not usually the kind of things that you post on Instagram. Oh, that's kind of the worst. And yet it's where you'll find yourself. And I want to tell you it gets better, but if you are committed to growth, I would say that it only gets I don't know what it gets because I'm in the middle of it. I love my daughter so much. I'm looking at pictures of her right now on my wall. If you were to come into my room, it is a good thing she's my daughter, or you might be worried that I am obsessed. I have an unhealthy obsession with somebody. She's the best in the entire world. Who for you is the best in the entire world? The monotony of love is a part of the deal, my friends. It is part of the deal. There are times where holding space is mind-numbingly boring. And that is to say that it is not entertaining or stimulating or something where if you don't like the first 3 seconds of it, you can scroll to the next thing and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. So maybe 5 seconds makes you laugh, and then scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. And yet it is a meditation. When you look at these, I was laying underneath a tree the other day and I was looking at the way that the tree grew, and how it obviously has the big trunk, and then it had a branch, and on that branch had a branch, and that branch had branches, and that branch had branches, and that branch had branches, and then that was the end. It didn't have any more branches. But this was then duplicated a number of times. And you think about the think about the pace of that tree. And we ourselves, compared to that tree, are but ants scattered across the earth with these short, insignificant lifespans. And we spend our time wanting what we're doing to mean something and to be remembered and to make a difference. And those things matter. And it's important to remember that they're also not needed, that your internal journey of knowing who you are, of finding the space to deeply love yourself without you needing to do something or contribute or all these things that oftentimes sound selfless. But if we were to look at them, have an element of selfish, you don't actually, that's not actually, what am I trying to say? That you don't need to do a single thing to be worthy. That worthiness isn't found through doing. And as the teachers out there who, are quote unquote enlightened, as they remind us, thinking is a form of doing. That you are already, always have been, always will be connected to infinity. And that's a tough one for those of us who are achievers and who have this urge to make the world a better place and to make an impact and to have your life mean something. That it's can be a trap to make the focus of your life those things. Because we really don't get to choose the impact that we make. We really don't. And we can burn ourselves out creating a legacy and creating art or creating books or building a nonprofit or all these things that are, I don't know what the word is. There's a word other than selfless, but you have to text me the word. There's a word. But it's oftentimes we don't realize what's going to make the impact. Even Shania Twain, I'm going to talk because I was listening to her documentary, and she was saying, I didn't know that the words I wrote were going to have that impact. There is somebody right now that remembered something you said that you'd be like, who? I said that? I'm going to tell you a story. I had this mentor. His name was Lloyd. This is back when I was in Milwaukee, back when I was a youngin'. And he used to go to when I was in college, I used to pick him up. He lived across the street from me, and he'd go to my classes with me. And I was, they called it Africology then. Now they call it African Diaspora Studies major at UW Milwaukee. And my teachers were like, yes, come to class. So he came to class, and I had wrote a poem on a piece of paper, and I printed off maybe 10 copies of that poem, and I had it in a folder. And he asked me if for something to write on. So I gave him the poem to write on the back of it. And we hung out a lot. And then a month later, I was in Denver with my mom. And how do I describe this person? Somebody that I was engaged to at the time, but was not engaged to anymore, but we still loved each other. She called me and said that word on the street is that Lloyd died. So I called his phone, and a family member answered, and I told them who I was, and they said that They know who I was, and I meant a lot to Lloyd. And they told me when his going home celebration was and that I should come. So I went and I arrived and the place was packed. So I was standing in the back. And they said that his granddaughter now was going to read a poem for us. And she started to read the poem. And I realized that she was reading my poem and that it was the poem that was on the back of the piece of paper I gave Lloyd to write notes on while we were in class together. And it didn't have my name on it, so they didn't know that I wrote the poem. And I had to go to work, so I had to leave, and I never got a chance to tell them that I wrote the poem. Oh, that is an experience that I will carry with me for the rest of my life, because that tells me that there is life after death, that death is not what we think it is, and that we can talk to our family, we can talk to our loved ones whenever we want. And that Lloyd was talking to me through that poem. And I love you, Lloyd. And I love you, Grandma. And I love you, all my loved ones who are here with me now. And that is infinity. There is no disconnection from infinity. And we disconnect ourselves in our minds, not in reality, from infinity when we think that life is all about doing. It is not. What is it about? It cannot be put into words. It can only be felt. And I hope in some small way that as we spend time together, that you can hear an echo of that feeling calling you back to yourself. I love you so much. I appreciate you. You are wonderful. You are amazing. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to each other. It is almost impossible to stop yourself from reacting. It is the moments after it, though, that we can take control of. So if somebody cuts you off and you honk and flip them off, like I did on Saturday, it's helpful to say to yourself, what am I doing? And I think those moments of catching yourself and saying, I don't want to be that person, it can help. So don't beat yourself up. The reaction part's tough. To get yourself to not react is almost impossible to stop. Slowly over time we can. So if you find yourself reacting, forgive yourself. Shame and beating yourself up has never, ever led to growth, ever. But honesty with yourself, self-accountability, personal responsibility in a way that is blanketed in love, that can. Now, F me, easier said than done there, folks. So don't look to me to be the role model or have the answers. I just get the opportunity to be around some truly remarkable people, and I'm just trying to channel their wisdom to you through me. Did I mention I love you? Because I do. All right. This is a wonderful intermission. We're going to bring you back to a beautiful guest, a wonderful guest, a brilliant guest. I don't know who that guest is going to be, but I know that they're going to be stupendous. That's my favorite word of today, stupendous. Have I mentioned that I love you? That I do? I do. Have I told you lately that I... No, that's... We're gonna sing. Let's sing up this one. You fill up my senses like night in the forest, like a mountains in springtime, like a walk in the rain, Like a storm in the desert, like a sleepy blue ocean. I love that line. Sleepy blue ocean. You fill up my senses. Come fill me again, my friends. Appreciate you. As always, wishing you peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.